two college radio DJs during the 90s, hosts Keith and Steve helped expose bands like Nirvana, Pavement, and PJ Harvey. They went to shows, interviewed musicians, and reviewed albums for various designs and papers. They worked security at concerts and once even did load-in for Fish. Now, they're dads. Whether you want to explore lesser-known music or take a trip down memory lane, tune into the new Dad Rock. Join hosts Keith and Steve as they navigate the ages together, sharing their love of music across various eras and genres. Always well-intentioned, often well-informed, seldom boring, the new Dad Rock will expand your mind.
Hey, Rockin' Dads. Welcome.
And Rockin' Moms.
To the new Dad Rock.
Though I probably shouldn't say that about people's moms. But yeah, rock and roll parents, if you will. The new...
Any listener, whether you're a mom, dad, or somewhere in between.
What if you were a former guest on our show and they heard the show where we made fun of our former guests? What would you do then?
Well, if I were them, what I would do is go straight to AI and have AI write a complaint letter to me.
Well, the new Dad Rock got its first complaint letter from ChatGPT just this week.
Yeah, it was from our former guest.
How embarrassing.
Brian, who was on the Van Halen versus Van Hagar episode. He was our first guest, wasn't he? I think he
might have been.
He was our first guest. And a couple weeks ago, Keith made an offhand comment about our guests need to work harder. And our guests haven't given us the bump that they, promised. But I do have to say, Brian, back in the nascent days of the early Dad Rock, did give us a true bump. And we, I think got our legs underneath us with the Van Halen Van Hagar episode. And then, it didn't hurt that, it did hurt, but Eddie Van Halen dying a couple, like a month or two later, gave us another boost. So,
Yeah.
So Keith was able to buy a pool, is the moral of the story.
With the Van Halen bump. In the 70s, I'm sure that meant something else.
So thanks, Brian, and thanks for the letter. Thanks for reaching out. And thank you, really, all the guests who put the time in. A lot of them were fans first, and we do appreciate them. And we're going to, I think we should have guests on again.
Yeah, don't we have to invite Brian back now?
I feel like we should. But 1975, I think he was born in 74. So let's give him a couple years to catch
grow up,
and we'll get him in. We'll get him in.
That sounds great. Yeah. Good thinking.
We'll hear from little Brian's 8-year-old music.
Well, happy first birthday, Brian.
Happy first birthday, Brian. Yes, 1975 is what we're doing this week. And the 1975, as I was doing research, I kept finding this band, the 1975.
Yeah, did you ever listen to them?
1970. I know they've existed, and they've been around probably, 10 or 15 years. I recognize the name. I actually clicked on one of their songs for the first time, and it was much more poppy than I anticipated it would be. I thought they were going to be more alternative.
No. I'd say they're even more like produced or like actually like top 10 hit makers. I think they're English.
Yeah.
But they're not from 1975.
No, and I don't even think any of them were even close to born in 1975.
That's actually probably a really good point.
and the truth of the matter is my kids even know who the 1975 is.
Yeah, so that makes...
So it makes it not the new Dad Rock. So for the new Dad Rock, we're not talking about the band that 1975. We're going to talk about the year 1975. And I don't want to get ahead, but let me tell you, dear listener, if you go back and look at what came out in 1975, I think you could have an entire classic rock station that only played music from 1975 and it would work.
It would work, and I'd be listening to a different station.
So in a few weeks, when Sirius XFM satellite radio puts out their 1975 channel, because you could do it, you could pull it off, and we'll get to that in a minute. But
do you have a song of the year 1976?
Well, 76 is different than 1975, so we're not going to probably talk about that.
Oh, wrong Wrong cue sheet.
And what we should also do is probably get into our weekly topics.
Wait, you have that recorded now? That's perfect. Good job.
I actually did record you doing. I think the last episode I dropped it in from you doing it another time. Thank you. We're using all the bells and whistles on the new Dad Rock.
We're getting so advanced in age. So the Gizzard, have they done the King Gizzard and Lizard Wizard? Have they done anything new since we last talked?
The only thing new since we last talked, I know we are anticipating their album coming out at the end of October. Since last we spoke, they put their pre-order up. So, all the crazy vinyl heads go out and buy 2 or 3 versions because they have different splatters and what have you. They did confirm that there's one album, single record, normal length songs, 7 songs. I think it's 28 minutes. And then there's the extended play album, which is a double album, including the opener is 20 minutes, just the one song. So I think it's close to 70 minutes or so, or 80 minutes extended version. So there are 2 official versions is the only thing new I can think of on the Gizzard this week.
Okay. That's still something.
Yeah.
I'm surprised there's not a whole new album out, but it's coming. I'm excited. I've been listening to them on YouTube. This 2023 tour is awesome.
It's absurd how good it is. I mean, they released as a bootleg the Chicago Salt Shed shows. There were 3 of them. But there are so many good bootlegs. Just King Gizzard Live YouTube, and there are just so many.
At Red Rocks when they did Lord of Lightning and Nonagon Suite. Man, I've been listening to that a ton. That one's awesome. So many good ones. The River Wah Wah Acoustic at Caverns was awesome. Yeah.
The Acoustic Caverns show, I would like to hear more of that.
That would be cool. Yeah, I mean, so that's what I do. I sit up in my office and I do work at night sometimes. And to the left of me is a YouTube video of King Gizzard Lizard Wizard going off live from 2023 tour. All right.
Okay, so what else is new going on? So we have what's new with the Gizzard. We have what's new generally.
Well, my son went to his first concert with me just last week.
Oh, right. You mentioned that. Little Yachty, right?
Yeah, Little Yachty. My friend bailed on me because he was sick.
Not to be confused with Yacht Rock. Right?
Not at all. Though the newer stuff gets close-ish. It's a little more Pink Floyd-y. It was a great concert. I tried to get my son to go earlier once I found out my friend was bailing on me. And then I'm leaving. He said no. And then when I'm leaving, I'm like, oh, well, I'm gone. Have a good night. I have an extra ticket. He's like, is that an invite? Like he wasn't paying attention the first time. So he came along and we had a good time. It was an all ages show. But Little Yachty has a new album out that's like Pink Floyd, but he's mostly famous for 4 or 5 albums of SoundCloud rap or whatever. And so he did 5 songs for the first set, then transitioned to his rap. That's when the whole audience went crazy because he's like, is this why you're here? And yeah, exactly. And then the last 3 songs are from the new album too. And it was really good. And Jasper had a good time.
So remind the listeners, how old is Jasper?
He's 13.
Okay. And this is his first concert.
Yeah. And I probably should have had a talk with him before we went there.
Yeah. There was probably some things to see. Did you get a shirt?
Yeah. No, I did not.
Do you remember that in middle school? All the kids who went to the concert the night before would have the concert shirt on.
Damn it. I should have gotten one. I can probably still order it online. I'll give it a look. Speaking of rappers, Lil Wayne came out with The Fix before that 6. So he's famous for putting out Carter albums, which are his albums. Probably been 20 years now. I don't know. Really long time. But so he comes out with The Fix before the 6, which is basically, I think it's the 10 songs that they cut from the album. So I think he's giving you the B-sides first. And then sometime later, a month later, or a year later, the actual album comes out. So
that's smart.
Well, it's cool too for the fans. You get 2 albums out of it, basically.
Yeah.
You dump your less awesome songs first. So of course, people are like, this is so disappointing. These beats sound dated, not even a good way, choppy. His rapping strong, which is cool, right? But none of these is a hit. It's like Yeah, this is the fix before the 6, and these are all the B-sides, or even further out B-sides, right? Like things that wouldn't make it. But I enjoyed it. Would have been a good pool album, by the way. Maybe next year. Halloween's coming up.
Halloween is coming up. And one thing about Halloween, which is in October, I think of October as it's just, I like to be a little chilled. I like to be a little spooked. I like to be a little creeped out.
It gets darker. Leaves fall. The wind picks up. Yeah.
Shadows are longer.
Shadows are longer. Nights are longer. Ooh, creepy.
Moons are fuller.
What's going on in the news?
So what's new? We are watching a program on, what is it, Apple TV or Apple Plus or Apple TV Plus? What is it actually called?
Apple TV Plus. I think there's Apple TV, then there's Apple TV Plus. I mean, the new Dad Rock Plus is coming out soon. That's the bonus version.
Whatever the television streaming service is. We're watching this show called The Changeling. I'm not sure if it's season 1 or if it's a limited series, but it's a pretty creepy story or show based on a novel by Victor LaValle, who is a noted Iron Maiden fan, by the way. Mm-hmm. But he is a local writer from New York, and this is maybe his 5th or 6th book. But he is... He's famous for taking a Lovecraft book and reimagining it from an African-American perspective, which is interesting because H.P. Lovecraft was a noted bigot. Racist.
Yep.
Bigot, yes. So him bringing or taking that story back is interesting. So nonetheless, in the news, and why this matters to the new Dad Rock, is that one of the characters, we're watching the show, and this is a minor character, but he's in multiple episodes, has speaking lines and everything. I'm like, that's the dude from Future Islands. And sure enough, it is Sam Herring, who, I don't know, do you know the Future Islands? Are you familiar with them? They're like a synth pop band that's been around for like the last decade plus.
Yeah, I always confuse them with another band, but I forget what that band is too.
Future Islands, I think, is most famous for right toward the end of David Letterman, one of the last couple of months of the show. They were on, and he just did this emotional rendition of their song called Seasons, and he's like pumping himself in the chest and throwing himself on the floor and just fully emoting, and David Letterman ate it up, and he went nuts. He loved it. So anyway, Future Islands, Sam Herring in a Victor LaValle show on Apple Plus called The Changeling. It's creepy. It's good for October.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
1975.
1975. Okay, so Bob Dylan going to his concert next in November. And his album that came out in 1975 was Blood on the Tracks.
Blood on the Tracks, arguably his best album. And
arguably, yeah.
Arguably his best album. Definitely top 5. And what's
top 2 or 3, yeah.
What's interesting about this to me was a return to form. I think we mentioned in a recent episode that he didn't tour for like 8 years. And this is when he started to go back on tour, was after this album, or really the next album, Desire, 76. But he was going through a breakup, and Blood on the Tracks was really a devastating album of heartbreak. Features a song, Idiot Wind, with one of the best lines ever, which is, "You're an idiot, babe. It's a wonder that you still know how to breathe." Like, that's cold. That
is cool, dude. Yeah, it's got Tangled Up in Blue, which I really dig. Shelter from the Storm, obviously pretty famous. Simple Twist of Fate.
Yeah.
Wow, what a great album. Yeah, it's probably number 2 for me, behind Homesick, something. Subterranean Alien or whatever.
Well, that's Highway 61 Revisited is the name of that album.
No. There's an album.
No, that's Dylan the name of a song. Subterranean Homesick Blues is a song on Highway 61 Revisited.
You sound right, but I think you're wrong, but I'm not smart enough to do this live. This is why Joe Rogan has a third person who's running the keyboard, because that'd be much better. Wait, so you're saying it's what album?
I'm thinking it's not that album now, but it's the one right next to it, which was called Bring It All Back Home.
That's what it's called. Yeah, thank you. That's my favorite. Sorry.
Okay, that was 65, and then also like later that year was Highway 61 Revisited. So yes.
Okay. Wow.
But from that peak right there, right after Highway 61 Revisited, then it was Blonde on Blonde, 1966, up until Blood on the Tracks. I would say there were several albums of relatively mediocre, uninspired music. I mean, there's a few songs on Chad Wesley Harding. There's a couple songs here and there, even Nashville Skyline. They have a couple songs, but not until you get to Blood on the Tracks in 75.
Bob Dylan was hard I got into Bob Dylan late. I think it was after college that I got into Bob Dylan. I was playing guitar a little, and I met a friend who's just learning guitar, and all he was doing was learning Dylan songs, which I thought was kind of cool. He was a lefty. I remember that. So that's when I started listening. But, you find the album or two that you really love, it's great. But if you end up on a wrong album, like the Harding one, like you said, or, you're like, eh. So if you're a fan, it's great, but yeah, you gotta get one of these albums. So try Blood on the Tracks if you like the Afghan wigs.
Seriously, right? That's funny that you say that, but it's kind of true. So yeah, I started listening, like Time Out of Mind came out in 97, which was like a late career highlight or renaissance. So that was popular. I didn't even really listen to that album much. I went back and listened to those classic eras, but I think I got the CDs from like Columbia House or BMG or one of those. Remember those mail order?
Oh, totally.
So they had like Blood on the Tracks. They had Highway 61. They had Bringing It All Back Home. So I had a bunch of those. And then Kristen and I were driving across Ireland in like 98 in a car that had a cassette. But we were on vacation. We didn't have any cassettes with us. We stopped at this record store in Bath and we got two things. One was the latest Mercury Rev album, which happened to be our Deserter Songs, which is an all-time classic album. But that was on CD. The car only had a tape deck, so we bought Blood on the Tracks, Bob Dylan. So we listened to that, like driving across Ireland and Wales.
Wow. Very cool.
In England.
Speaking of England, there's this other band called Pink Floyd. 1975, they released Wish You Were Here.
Shine On You Crazy Diamond in various parts. How many parts are on that album?
Is it 5?
I think 1 through 5 and then 6 through 10 is later in the album. But it's like an ode to, Wish You Were Here. It's missing Sid Barrett. Yeah. With 2 black goals for eye.
But Wish You Were Here had Have a Cigar on it. Wish You Were Here itself, which is the first song every guitarist learns, that first part. Welcome to the Machine. Great album. I'm going to listen to it after this. Yeah. Woo. Yeah. That might be their best album.
Les Claypool has covered 2/3 of this live in various Les Claypool and Frog Brigade incarnations. But I mean, it's crazy. Like, we just named 2 all-time classic albums from 75, but also in 75, you have Physical Graffiti by Led Zeppelin, Kashmir, which, I don't know, do you like the song Kashmir by Led Zeppelin? Like,
yeah.
Totally. I think it's the most overrated song ever.
Nah, it's cool live. I think it's fun to play and easy to play too.
It's a good song, but it's just...
Yeah, it's a good song. That's all I'm saying. I'm not arguing for it. I'm not including it on any list.
I think this is when classic corporate rock peaked. Like 1975, Bruce Springsteen, Born to Run comes out. I mean, ZZ Top is out. Fame, David Bowie. Bad Company is out with all their hits. Electric Light Orchestra. All classic rock had figured itself out. It had honed off all rough edges from the psychedelic 60s, from the rhythm and blues. They were even incorporating some saxophones. They're pulling that in from the jazz scene. You know how Miles Davis is going more rock. Rock is borrowing from jazz as well. 1975, it basically had all come together. Everything was polished. Elvis Presley's a showman there. Mm-hmm. He's fat and he's out in Vegas. Everybody is, wearing spandex. Queen is becoming Queen. Elton John, all the excess. And I think part of it is the ubiquity of cocaine.
Totally.
I mean, the drug scene had changed from the psychedelic 60s to the grimy, speedy, kind of cranked up early 70s. Now the cocaine has started. And guess what's bubbling under? Like all these classic rock songs. I'm not kidding. You could listen to 1975 classic rock all day, and that would be a station. Steely Dan is out there. The Eagles. It's every one of those bands is peak 1975. But bubbling under, you're starting to have disco.
Yeah, really. When we get to 76, because I was doing my homework earlier today, 76 has all those songs that pushed over into the top for disco, but we're not there yet. Exactly,
and that's what's crazy is I think what we've identified starting in the first few episodes of the 70s is all of these genres like splintering off, like from the violence, the eruption, the changes of the 60s. You get into the 70s, and now halfway through the decade, things are starting to consolidate.
It's funny you say that, because I was about to say on November 6th of 1975, the Sex Pistols played their first concert. So
right.
You're about to say consolidate, and I'm saying they're about to lose their shit.
Well, that's what I think it's kind of, everything had all different styles. They started to meld into and reach the peak in 1975 of peak classic rock. And now, like you said, so Christmas Day of 1975, Iron Maiden forms. So, talk about a change in the undercurrent. That punk scene, that metal scene, Judas Priest was around, Scorpions were around, Black Sabbath was around, but the new wave of British heavy metal, which Iron Maiden ushers in, and they weren't there on Christmas Day of 1975 yet. It took them a few years to hone their craft, and we'll get to it in a later episode, but 75.
Interesting. Talking Heads actually played their first show at CBGB's in June 20th.
See?
75.
Yeah. By 74 and now our year 75, krautrock has started to dissipate and metamorphosize into something a little bit more electronic. So you have krautrock reaching out, maybe touching, just breezing past disco. You have rock is starting to get more longer playing songs. So, the excess of the late 1970s, the self-indulgence, that's when you think of that part of the decade, that's after 1975. So I think 1975 was a peak year of distillation and then dissonance.
So there you have it, folks. A glimpse into the rock and roll time machine of 1975. These albums and bands define the era and continue to rock our hearts today.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in to another episode of The New Dad Rock. We'll catch you on the flip side. Yeah, Joe. Hey, yo. Hey.